Yes, indeed. Hi, I'm Bill DeYoung. I want to introduce you to Meredith Gauntz and Melanie Bowman, who have written a book called Traveling St. Pete: A Girl's Guide, published by St. Petersburg Press, which is part of the St. Pete Catalyst, and it's a really fun book. And I'm going to ask you, whoever wants to take this, let's start here before we start really delving into it. What does that mean, a girl's guide? I know I've read the book, but tell me, Melanie, you want to take that one? What does that mean?
Sure. So a girl's guide is really just a fun, whimsical way for girls, women specifically, to experience St. Pete. And Meredith actually wrote a girl's guide for Savannah
Hmm.
10 or 11 years ago.
So what makes it a girl's guide? Like I could go to these restaurants, couldn't I? I
Uh,
could the
yeah,
museum. Yeah,
absolutely. So
it's just the breezy tone in which it's written, perhaps, and like you'll say, yeah.
there's there's spas in it, and we even talk about, in the beer section, we talk about how they really tailor that to a, a women's experience in some cases,
Hmm.
and which drinks would be good for women specifically. So
Are either of you from St. Petersburg? What's your story?
so
Um, yeah,
not originally. Go
No.
ahead.
no, I'm from Savannah. So,
Hmm.
but we moved here about 12 years ago.
Hmm.
And I didn't really feel like a local until the last few years, I guess. And so Melanie was actually the one who said, we need to write this. Like, we need to do this. Because I kind of was like, well, I don't know. I'm not born and raised here, but St. Pete has changed so much that I think the St. Pete that people, if you did grow up here, it looks very different now anyway.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think,
It looks a lot different from when it did 12 years ago when you got here.
completely
Yeah.
in a good way.
Tell me about the Girl's Guide to Savannah, though. I mean, was that sort of the forerunner of this? Is that sort of the model that you used? I
Yeah,
lived in Savannah for 6 years, probably overlapped with you. We'll talk about it after we get off of this briefly, but I know Savannah is very, visitor friendly and all those sorts of things. Well, how did that lead to this, though, Meredith?
Yeah. Well, so the idea for the Savannah book came up actually. So I graduated law school. My first job out of law school was in Savannah. I was working for a law firm there in downtown Savannah. And I'd be walking around on my lunch break and I would see these groups, mostly of women, because it was a very popular destination, similar to St. Pete, for bachelorette parties and girls weekends, mother-daughter trips, friends from college reunions, like those kinds of things. And I would see them kind of going into these chain restaurants and I would just cringe because I was like, no, there's so many better places to go. And they didn't know. And so I actually one day on my lunch break, I put together like this, one pager that I would keep in my purse. And so whenever I would see girls out and about, I'd be like, here's some of my favorites. Like, I'm raised here, I live here, just so that you know.
Oh,
And
you became that annoying person down on River Street handing out
yeah,
papers, right?
yeah. Yeah,
That
that was
was you.
totally me. Totally me.
That
Yeah.
that was
I
you.
mean, some people didn't want my sheet and were, like, who is this annoying person? But I just felt like I needed to guide them in some way. So decided to make a book about it. And it was, I think a lot of people really enjoyed having that as a way to plan their weekends, to plan their getaways, and for locals to say, oh, I kind of forgot about that restaurant, or I kind of, I haven't really thought about that shop in a while. Maybe I should pop in.
It's a matter of perspective too, with women and a lot of guys I know just really want to know where the breweries are. Melanie, how did the two of you meet? Tell me that story.
We actually met through, my husband had met Meredith at a networking event and
Hmm.
said, I met this girl Meredith tonight. I think you'd really like her. And so we went out to lunch at Hawker's, the four of us,
Hmm.
me and my husband, Meredith and her husband. And my husband and I had done some family planning and some goal setting like a week before. And I had set a goal that I was like looking for a passion project that involved writing, because it's something I just really connect with, the writing process.
Uh-huh.
And Meredith started talking about her Savannah book. And she said, I'd love to do one for St. Pete. I don't think I have the time. It's just a different time in life. And I was like, well, what if you had a partner? I have a little bit of time. I figured, I needed something else to add into my 2 jobs and 2 kids and just
Okay, Meredith's a lawyer. What do you do? Don't tell me that.
So I am, by training, I'm a clinical social worker and a public health professional. So I'm currently working with family caregivers. So oftentimes my clients are the older adult daughter or son of an aging parent, or maybe their spouse. So I'm working with that population. And also I'm working in our family business of Champagne Truffle Company. And yeah,
I've heard of that, actually.
yeah,
I've never had a truffle in my life, but I do remember reading about Champagne Truffle Company.
yeah.
I have to go look that up somewhere.
It's
Guys,
so
how did things qualify for this book? Did you sort of, these are just my favorites, or did you walk down the street and say, we've never tried that place before? How did something qualify for the Girls Guide?
So I think we had a criteria of it. Just we had to have been there and loved it, and then the criteria was it had to be open for 2 years or more.
So nothing fly by night. And one of the things about restaurants in St. Peter, anywhere, and I know there's a lot more than restaurants in here, but sometimes they don't last. I mean, did you sort of think, well, we better get this book out because 1 or 2 of these places might not exist by the time we get the book out. That's the nature of the business.
Yeah, and that was kind of our thought process with making sure that that the venue was in existence for 2 years or more. Was usually there's some staying power if you've gotten through 2 years, especially if one of those years was a global pandemic.
Oh yeah.
So when we're sure that there will be some changes, and we kind of being the lawyer that I am, we have like a disclaimer in our introductory message that basically says check the hours first.
Yep.
Because
I
even
remember
if they're wonderful, they may change. But hopefully a lot of these places are here to stay. We tried to also go through and we had a couple of favorite Mexican restaurants that we liked, and we were like, we got to narrow it down, which is so we tried to kind of make sure we had one Italian and one key pizza place, because if you're coming here for a weekend, we know from planning weekend trips, you don't want to try all the same foods. You kind of want a good variation.
Sure. And there's also a disclaimer we should say at the beginning that says, you were not influenced, and nobody paid for a spot. That goes without saying that this is all you guys,
Yeah.
I wondered if your friends and your families had suggestions. Guys, you got to go try this place, or take a bike ride over here. This is beautiful. Did that happen, or were people throwing suggestions at you all the time?
Yeah, sure, they did. But I think we sat down early on in the process and we agreed on kind of a outline pretty quickly, and we felt really good about it, and we didn't really waver from it. People may have made some suggestions, and we just kind of stayed the course with what we had outlined, I think.
Meredith has been here for 12 years. How long have you been here? Did you tell me this already?
So I've been in Tampa Bay for 30 plus years, 35 plus years. And I've been in St. Pete for 12.
See, okay, it's 12 years for both of you, but you were more familiar with St. Pete. So, like Meredith, you've seen the unbelievable amount of change and growth in this city. Could this book have been possible 12 years ago? I'll ask either of you that.
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't think so. I'm myself, you didn't ask me, but that's what I think,
Yeah.
And I don't know that there would have been as much of a market for it. I mean, I just, when you walk through downtown now, it's just, there are so many people who are clearly here visiting and have kind of discovered that St. Pete is a destination. I think 12 years ago, I'm not sure that people would have thought of St. Pete as such a gem.
Absolutely.
Tell me the name of your illustrator, guys, because I forgot to write it down. And the illustrations are so cool in this book. What's her name?
Her name is Erin Hanna.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay.
he was the illustrator for the Savannah Guide as well.
Okay.
We were actually neighbors in Savannah. We lived one street apart, and she had a landscape architecture company in Savannah, and that's what she does by trade. And she, you know, I loved her work, and I reached out and asked if she wanted to do this project with me, and we had so much fun. We would just walk over to each other's houses. This was pre-kids. We'd walk over to each other's houses with a bottle of wine, and she would draw, and
Oh,
I would
yeah.
write, and it was so fun. And so when Mel and I decided we wanted to do this, I was
Yeah.
like, well, you know, really, her illustrations are so amazing. I wonder if she would be interested. And she couldn't say yes fast enough. And so we would just take pictures of the facades and send them to her. And she would send us back her design idea. And
Yeah.
every time one would come in, it was like Mel and I were like, yes, this is it. It was so fun.
Well, I have to say that it's very appealing. It's the way you guys write and the illustrations and the choices you made. Not being a girl, I mean, gets a little gossipy for me sometimes, but you know, I'm just confessing here. Listen, Traveling St. Pete, a Girl's Guide is available from St. Petersburg Press, obviously online, but it's also at Tombolo.
Yes.
And I hear it's a book and bottle.
Yes.
I saw it on Amazon. Anywhere else that I should mention?
So we are in the process of, we have these beautiful note cards where we're doing personalized notes to all of the venues that are featured in the book with a copy, telling them what page they're featured on and giving them the opportunity, if they want to sell them in their location.
Oh, yeah.
And so
That's a great idea.
Oh, thank you. So we're just getting started on doing that. It's going to be kind of a gradual process since we do have our plates a bit full, and we want to make sure that we do generate a lot of traffic to Tombolo and Book and Bottle.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but as of right now, it looks like Plain Jane and Soiree are both interested in carrying it, so they will be doing that, and I would imagine a number of others as well, because everyone's been really excited about it.
It's going to be volume 2 pretty soon, you know, and there's enough new places coming up. Listen, Meredith and Melanie, such a pleasure to talk to you both.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best with this. Thanks for being with us today. And I want to remind you, don't go away after we finish recording, just for a second.
Sure thing.
Take care.